and our program live on Facebook here on Fridays at 14:15 hours GMT or 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time in Canada. We're also heard on World Radio Paris on the shortwave service from Germany and Calgary 97.5 FM Radio Nigeria. I'm Lynn Desjardins, and with me today are Marie-Claude Simard, Terry Haig, and Levon Savants. Our technicians today are Marc-André, he hasn't had a gender change as far as I know, Marc-André Deschamps, and Benoit Durand. And of course, everyone's going to be upset if I don't mention the mysterious Pierre Dutil, who is there and keeping an eye on things for us. Coming up in this half hour, I'll have a United Nations expert who warns of what he calls climate apartheid, and a Canadian professor who describes one way that he thinks it applies to Canada. Terry.
Frank Capra movie unfolding down in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia.
And Levon.
Well, I'll speak about to a Canadian Middle East expert about these latest tensions between the U.S. and Iran.
And Marie-Claude, what do you have for us today?
Oh, well, I'll talk to you about Canada Day and hidden treasuries on our website.
Ah, excellent. So
hidden treasures?
Yeah, treasures.
Cool.
Yes,
Right.
yeah. So, but before we get to that, I just want to let you know that we will be here live next Friday. However, as of July 12th, there will be no program for 4 consecutive weeks. It seems we all need a holiday. However, do go to our website because we'll still have all the programming that we normally have for you during the week, and we'll have special items for you on the weekend that you can have a look at as well. So our first item, a United Nations expert says the world is risking what he calls climate apartheid scenario, where the rich will be able to escape the heat, hunger, and conflict, while the poor are left to suffer. Climate change threatens democracy and human rights, says UN Special Rapporteur Philip Alliston in a new report, and to get some Canadian reaction on his use of this very strong language, I reached Philip Loring. He's a professor of geography at Canada's University of Guelph.
I think it's strongly worded, but appropriately so. This report, it seems to me, is born as much out of frustration as it is out of urgency regarding climate change. And it reads very much as an indictment of inaction, but also a very clear set of guidelines for what we can do. The issue is that the impacts of climate change really are going to impact some people much more dramatically than others, and that's a human rights issue.
In what ways will it do that?
Well, we're already seeing in places all around the world, whether it's through impacts on the price of food, crop issues, crop failures, or impacts of inability to access drinking water, or things like storms. We're already seeing people who have the least ability to respond, people who are poor, impoverished, experiencing these impacts first. In Canada's Arctic is a great example. All around the Arctic, impacts on sea ice are affecting fish and game populations, affecting traditional society's ability to hunt and fish. And these are people who did not contribute to the problem in the first place.
How bad do you think things could get?
Well, I think we have pretty good projections that if we don't act, things are going to get bad. We know that climate change and climate instability can be directly linked to conflict, because when people lose their environmental security, when their livelihoods are infected, when they're sick or desperate, we see conflict, we see refugeeism. We already see refugee crisis at the U.S. border with Mexico. Canada is leading the world in how we accept and welcome refugees. And so it's already bad, but there's an opportunity to not let it get worse.
The report points out that the private sector can't be relied on to help. Where does responsibility lie for dealing with these issues?
Yeah, I think that the point the report is trying to make there about the private sector is that we can't rely on them to help on their own, that we need to give them a shove. And we can do that through our own choices, the companies that we choose to patronize, but we also need to do that through policy, through encouraging more socially and ecologically responsible behaviors, through incentivizing the development of new lower carbon or no carbon technologies, whether it's for food production or for energy generation. There's opportunities here. We don't need to see our economic prosperity and environmental sustainability as at odds with one another, but I think a lot of people do because they're so invested in the past.
What will it take for countries to start mobilizing to help people suffering the effects of climate change?
Well, I hope we don't have to wait for things to get really bad, because, as I said, when one of government's most important responsibilities is to help us with our security and to enforce our rights, and when that stops happening, people get discontented, they revolt, they leave, there's conflict, and hopefully it doesn't have to get that far. I think we see grassroots movements around the world where people are already taking to the streets. The Extinction Rebellion in the UK is one noteworthy example. We see lots of action on this already, and I think there's a tide turning in terms of the use of this extreme language and how we're framing the problem, and governments are realizing they have to step out or get out of the way.
So that was Philip Loring. He's a professor of geography at Canada's University of Guelph, and he was responding to this report from the UN Special Rapporteur, who says climate change could push 120 million people into poverty by 2030, and that many will have to choose between starvation and migration. He also condemns governments around the world for not taking meaningful action on climate change. And to quote this rapporteur, Philip Alston, states have marched past every scientific warning and threshold, and what was once considered catastrophic warming now seems to be like a best-case scenario. He goes on to say, and I quote, states are failing to make even the current inadequate commitments to reduce carbon emissions and provide climate financing, while continuing to subsidize the fossil fuel industry with $5.2 trillion per year. And he says maintaining the current course is a recipe for economic catastrophe. So for anyone who would like to see the report themselves, I've posted a link on my report on this at rcinet.ca. Coming up, we'll have something about tensions, very serious tensions between Iran and the United States. Stay with us. So very upbeat music for a bit of a scary story here. Tensions between the United States and Iran have reached new highs. U.S. President Donald Trump, of course, this week threatened to obliterate parts of Iran, and Iranian officials called White House actions mentally retarded. So, Levon, you looked into this story.
Well, then all this posturing and tough talk comes after new U.S. sanctions against Iran. On Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order imposing sanctions against the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and other senior figures, including the foreign minister, which was seen as unusual. The move comes after Iran shot down a U.S. drone on June 20th. The U.S. was about to launch a retaliatory strike, and President Trump kind of canceled it at the last minute, saying that too many people were going to be killed, and he didn't think it was proportionate. So the U.S. Is sending additional forces to the Persian Gulf, and Iran has threatened that if it's attacked, it will make U.S. suffer throughout the region, not just in the Persian Gulf. So for more on this, I spoke with Besma Momani. She teaches political science and international relations at the University of Waterloo in Ontario. And I began by asking her, what did she make of all this latest round of tough talk and name-calling, which was kind of unusual, especially coming from the Iranian President Rouhani, who has tried to keep his cool so far. And hear what she had to say.
I think it's indicative of an escalation between the U.S. and Iran. The Iranians obviously want to get relief from the international sanctions before. At the moment, 80% of the country is under economic sanctions. People are struggling. The regime is hurting. And all of that is basically pushing them to try and hit, not perhaps the Americans directly, because they're smart enough not to do that, but to provoke the U.S. And provoking the U.S. includes everything from hitting oil tankers, because, of course, the Americans are very interested in ensuring that international shipping continues through the Strait of Hormuz. It also includes downing a drone that the Iranians claim was in their international waters. Of course, it being an unmanned drone and not a civilian passenger, which of course, even the Iranians claimed that they had access to and could have hit, is really a way of trying to hit the Americans, but not directly and not militarily in a way that would escalate matters, but in their eyes, hopefully induce them to sort of negotiate a way out of the sanctions. Of course, we see the reverse happening in the Americans. They are pushing for even more sanctions, much of which I don't think are really effective in changing the dynamics pretty much. But certainly this has really made, I think, the U.S. president even more keen on inflicting pain on the Iranians. And so we're really at an impasse here. And sadly, it is, I think, the average Iranian and some of the regional countries who are really paying the price of all of this escalation.
How do you see this developing further? I mean, the two countries are at an impasse. It looks like Iran is trying to I guess, provoke the United States to a level that is kind of a manageable confrontation. What's the way out?
Yeah, indeed, that is their tactic, and there is no way out. The only way out is, continuing like this, bumbling along until perhaps, sadly, there may be even a miscalculation that, escalates things to a military confrontation. But I think if there's no sort of capitulation on either side to finally want to meet and negotiate, then it's going to have to hopefully change only under perhaps a change in president in Washington, which is kind of, I think, where the Iranians think they're going to get some relief possibly.
As you can see, Professor Momani is not very optimistic about at least the immediate future in terms of settling these tensions between Iran and the United States. And it's kind of putting pressure also on the U.S. allies, especially the Europeans, but also Canadians who supported this Iran deal that allowed Iran Western relief from Western sanctions in exchange for them to freezing their nuclear programs. And now it seems that these programs are slowly going back on track. I mean, the Iranians have been so far very careful not to cross certain red lines. They're they're saying that, whatever we're forced to do is the U.S. fault. But it will be interesting to see what happens if and when the situation is pushed to kind of a limit, whether the European countries who really didn't like the U.S. pulling out of unilaterally out of this Iran deal are forced to choose between the Iranian side and the U.S. side.
Interesting times. Thank you very much, Levon.
You're welcome.
Something a little more cheerful for you in just a moment. Well, with so much bad news in the world, sometimes we forget the power of a simple act of kindness, Terry.
Just your smile is
Oh.
enough for me. A random and anonymous act of kindness has residents of the Nova Scotia town of New Glasgow feeling pretty good about themselves and life in general these days. Now, the good vibes began last weekend when town worker Doug Miller began setting up for a funding announcement at a local park. It was cold, dark, dank, pretty crummy day. Then Miller noticed something, a baggie under a chair. Inside was a $100 bill and a note. Here's what the note said. Quote, "Always know that there is good in the world and joy to be found. I hope you know or will learn that you are priceless and worth more than any paper or plastic." Now, I spoke to Miller on Tuesday and began by asking him what happened. It's something out of a Frank Capra movie.
I was setting up a PA and a bunch of chairs up on a platform under a gazebo, and I happened to notice this yellow Post-it note in a plastic bag. It was just sitting there. It wasn't taped. It was just sitting there. I said, that's odd. Why would anybody just, maybe some teenager dropped something and just forgot about something and forgot about it. And anyway, I walked over and there was a note. I read the note, and then I rolled it over and there was a $100 bill, and it didn't make any sense to me. It's like something out of something you'd find like on something out of Hollywood, you'd see in a Hollywood movie. And my head was a bit in the clouds, and I couldn't really understand why someone would let this go, and I'm surprised it didn't blow off into the river. And it was quite highly unusual for our area. And anyway, someone very generously left a $100 note in a plastic bag, and I happened to be there at the right place at the right time. And I mean, anyone could have taken it. And it was very highly unusual and interesting and uplifting, and just a whole bunch of very amazing emotions all at once.
Well, the note is amazing. I mean, it's like, always known there is good in the world and joy to be found, it read. I hope you know or will learn that you are priceless and worth more than any paper or plastic. I mean,
Exactly.
that's amazing. That's an amazing
That's
note.
amazing. That's absolutely amazing. That's worth more to me than that money. It'll never be forgotten, that's for sure. It'll be embedded in my memory forever. I've told my family, my kids, whatnot, and it's very surreal. I'm very overwhelmed with all the attention it's getting, and whoever did this deserves the attention, not me. The note is very, how can you say it? It's amazing. It defies description.
Are people down your way genuinely and generally people with generosity of spirit?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. They would do anything for anybody if they come off the street and help them out. That's what Atlantic Canada is known for.
That is an edited version of my conversation with Doug Miller. He's a farmer and a city worker down east in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. And he found himself in the middle of a Frank Capra movie, and everybody in the town is really, really excited about this act of generosity. The guy is anonymous, the person who left the money, and $100, I guess, is a lot. I mean, it is a lot of money.
It is.
Down
It
there.
is.
And I don't know. I've never been down there. I've only been down to Halifax by plane. I've never sort of traveled through there.
Well,
but apparently the people down east are fabulous.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Oh,
And you know what? It's actually something that I've been thinking about, how much I would love to go on a vacation down east. We don't forget, Canada's such a huge country, so it's not like, just driving for an hour, like in Europe, where you drive for an hour and you get to another country or another town or something. It's a huge country. So to drive to say, Halifax, I don't know, 10 hours? Something like that.
At least.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. 12,
But
maybe,
well
yeah.
worth it. I mean,
Yeah.
the coast is beautiful. Countryside is just fantastic. And as he said, the people are astonishingly friendly and kind and nice to each other. So, yeah, go. Definitely.
Does anybody know anything about the person who left?
No,
So it's a big mystery.
It's a big mystery, and that's what's exciting everybody, that somebody would actually come and do this and leave 100 beans under a chair.
But I think the note is even worth more than the
Yeah, that's
bill.
what he said. He said
Yeah.
that the note is gonna.
Yeah.
That's what he said is gonna be. Mr. Miller said is gonna be with him forever. That note that
Yeah.
you are worth, and it's true.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, we are worth more than that piece of paper, a piece of plastic.
Yeah, there's also the whole movement of pay it forward. The people who go into
that's
coffee
right.
shops and then
You might end up giving that $100 to.
Oh, he's giving it away.
yeah.
He's not
Sorry,
keeping
I
it.
wasn't.
No, but that was. I mean, I couldn't do the whole conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
No. But he.
With another note?
Hey, with
Is he
another
go-
note.
He could start a chain of notes.
That's right. A chain of notes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it has everybody really talking, because what they're excited about too is that what we were talking about before is like all the bad news we're sharing all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
This is a story of good news. This is a good news story. This is Frank Capra. This is a film.
Well,
There you go.
yeah,
it's
good.
a wonderful life.
Yeah, and if you want to hear the rest of Terry's interview, well, you can just go to
You
our
should.
website.
Oh, I'll do it for you. Oh, no, you have to. Okay. Well, okay.
Okay, listen, it's holiday.
Yeah.
There's a holiday on Monday. It's
Yep.
Canada Day, because we were talking about traveling and vacation and so on. And Marie-Claude, you have something for us about Canada
Yeah, well, I
Day.
was going to tell you a bit about Canada Day, but I'm not sure anymore if I'm qualified.
Why would that
Why?
be?
Because you remember you sent me all those links about Canada from Historica. What's the
Oh, yes,
organization?
Historica Canada. That's a
Yeah.
non-profit.
And one of the links went to an exam that new citizens have to take.
Ah.
I failed.
Oh, no.
Yes.
That test on,
Yeah.
Everybody failed it. Only 30.
No, I bet Levon didn't.
No, I bet he
No,
did.
I didn't.
No.
About the
Because I'm a
you
Canadian
need-
citizen, I had to
Oh,
take
you had to
it.
learn that? But about the Newfoundland dogs and stuff, that's the one that Anthony Wilson Smith put out. He said everybody failed it.
Yeah.
That
Anyways,
test.
I got 7 on 10, and you need
Oh, that's
75%.
Really?
So one of the questions, I mean, okay, I had 15 minutes to do it, and I did it in about 30 seconds. So that may explain it. Was early in the morning. I was overconfident, but like, where is the highest height summit in Canada?
Mount McKinley?
Well, the
Northwest
which province or
Territories.
territory?
Northwest Territories.
Any other?
I don't know where Mount McKinley. Don't I get points
Where
for
is
knowing
Mount
the name
McKinley?
of
So,
it?
anyways, the answer is Yukon.
Well, yeah.
See?
It's,
Yeah, but it
Is
was
that where
a
Mount
choice.
McKinley is?
I don't know. I don't even know the name.
How
So
bad
there
are
we
we?
go.
No,
right?
but that's a
How
great
bad
thing
are
about
we?
Canada. We
Yes.
don't wave flags.
There was a question about the name of a highway in Ontario.
A highway in
I think
Ontario.
the highway of
Veterans?
heroes.
Oh,
yeah, well,
that- well, we
I
got
think
one
I
in
might have
Quebec,
said yeah, but we don't call it like that. We call it
Chemin de souvenir.
Ouais, c'est ça.
Memories.
Yeah.
Yes.
So-
But
I should have done it in French.
and that, of course,
Yeah.
refers to these highways that were dedicated to the veterans
Yeah.
who have.
Anyways, it's a silly test, and we have a better
No.
test on our website.
Yes.
Yes,
There
we
you
have
go.
a section that's called Canada in Questions. Actually, well, we can start with another question, another section that's very good. I was telling you at the beginning that I was going to tell you about treasures on our website because I have a feeling that maybe people stay on our homepage and go to the newsy stuff, but there's a lot of things you can find out about Canada in the other sections. So this is Discovering Canada, and you can go through all the provinces. You learn all the stats about the provinces, but also it tells you about how to explore Canada by car. Did you know that we have? I forget already. Yeah, can you click on by car?
What?
He doesn't hear.
Explore Canada
There
by
you
car.
go.
Yeah, I think there's 900,000 kilometers. What is it?
There it is.
900,000 kilometers of roads. It's actually the biggest réseau, the
Network.
More than
network
Russia?
of roads in the world.
Wow,
according
who
to
knew?
us, yes.
And look how beautiful some of them
So,
are.
you can learn a lot of things. And anyways, on that same page, we can go
By boat?
back now to,
I wanna
by
try it
boat.
by boat.
Yeah.
By
We're,
boat, like, I guess you
we
could
have-
go right through to the heart of the country,
Well,
starting at the St. Lawrence River, which is it feeds into the Atlantic Ocean, and you could go all the way practically
You
to the Great
remember,
Lakes.
was it last year or the year before? There was this couple that canoed
Yes.
all the way from Vancouver to
Yes.
Halifax. I
Yeah,
think.
but wouldn't you have to do some portages? It's the
Yeah,
portages. I
so-
don't want to carry the luggage in the canoe.
yeah, you hear when we read about the explorers and they first went through the
Oh, yeah, that's amazing
it's
when you think about
crazy.
it, yeah.
Yeah, and
But
there
it's
were
actually-
rapids, of course,
Yeah.
in
What do you
Lachine.
call that when you go over through the rapids with the
Portage.
over your head?
Portage in
Portage,
French.
thank
Is
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
No, there's no English
We
word
call
for
it a portage.
So also on that page, Discovering Canada, there's a little icon called Canada in Questions, and Pierre will show it to us.
Oh, is that the quiz?
Here we go.
Questions and
That's the
answers
quiz.
on Canada.
Let's put it full screen. Anyways,
Okay.
there's all those squares that
There
are
you go.
questions like, this province is famous for its sandy beaches and warm water.
Sandy
PEI.
beaches.
Alberta.
No,
PEI.
wait. Sandy.
Vancouver!
Oh,
I mean,
really?
Vancouver.
No,
Well, you can go
British
east
Columbia.
too.
yeah, but you could also.
PEI.
Hey, okay.
What are the Grand Banks and where? That I know.
Oh, I know.
that's on
Off
top.
There's no
Newfoundland,
codfish.
and that, of course,
Used to
was
be.
Used
a lot
to
of
be.
that
fish.
The
was
Grand Banks, they're not in
Newfoundland.
off the coast of Newfoundland, and they used to have a gazillion fish. When the explorers first came, they could just drop a basket over the side of the boat and pull up huge quantities of fish. Of course, the whole fishery collapsed because it was overfished and still has not recovered, even though they've put limits and a moratorium on fishing cod. So
How
that's
do
a
we
very
call the
important
first
story.
inhabitants of Quebec? How do we call them? Hey, come here.
I don't even know.
Jean,
No.
Avec-
les habitants,
Ouais.
les habitants.
Ouais.
No, the first one.
Sure.
The colons. maybe?
No,
Nicolas?
it's habitants.
Well, do we see the answer?
No, what were the answers?
Everyone's just
Click
going to have to go. They're going to have to go to the website. Okay, which province has
Canada.
French as its
That one is-
official?
That's
Okay,
a tough
here
one.
we
New
go.
Brunswick.
We live
New
here.
Brunswick.
No, New
Brunswick
Brunswick
is
is
the only-
bilingual.
is
It's
the
the only
only
bilingual
bilingual
province.
province.
Oh, the
where
only
the
official-
official language is English and French. The
Oh,
only
okay,
province
so what is Quebec?
No,
Our
Quebec
official
is it-
language?
is French.
It's French. Yeah, that's the only
French
language.
only. However, federally, when it comes to the things that are governed by the federal government,
Yeah.
Oh,
that
here we
is
go.
officially bilingual.
Okay.
There you go.
There you
Quebec
go.
with a push pin.
The big push pin in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Because-
give us another question, Pierre.
Okay, go ahead, Pierre.
So we could see how
Stump us. This
how
is
bad
like
we
Jeopardy,
are.
like that guy that was on Jeopardy for
We have a great
18
website.
million
we
weeks.
need one of those Stefan's wheels or something
Yeah.
like that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
What's Stephane's wheels?
In the French section
Yeah.
of the show, he has quizzes too, but he has like all a stroboscope light, and he gives actually points.
Really?
And
Yes,
every once
he
in a
makes
while
it
we've
very
won.
elaborate.
Oh wow, that sounds like a great deal.
Oh,
of
by the
fun.
way, just I want to give a plug for Canada Day on Monday. I've got an interview with a great guy.
Oh, that's cool.
About what's going on in Toronto now with people, how it's changing, how it's evolving, and how the people of color are feeling totally at home because of the victory in basketball and what that meant. It was more than just a victory, a professional sports victory. It meant something to the people. What? Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because that's all we see.
What is
on
the most
screen.
populated city in Canada?
but
Toronto.
We should have
Toronto.
a camera on you when you talk. Sorry.
Well, and also, speaking of diversity, because we had
Thank you,
a
that's the word.
special day on diversity,
Yeah.
and I did a little blog. If people want to go on the site and just put in diversity, there was a special day. And furthermore, yesterday was Multiculturalism Day. How many people know that it is official law in Canada that multiculturalism is actually legislated and is part of Canada officially. And there are projections, and I can't remember exactly, I have to go back to the website, that racially, in terms of visible minorities, I think in Toronto by the year 2030 or something,
gonna be- yeah, it's
minorities
gonna
are
be
going
taking
to
over Toronto, yep.
outnumber, they'll be over 50% in
I
Toronto.
believe there's 500,000 people from the Caribbean living in Toronto right now.
Yeah, it's a
That's
wonderful
amazing.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Now,
a
if
totally-
you're interested in the intellect part of Canadians, we have also a long format on inventions.
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
very
Interesting. Canadian inventions. People don't realize.
Yeah.
Basketball.
Insulin.
Basketball.
Yeah, that was a Canadian.
But he
man
did
who
it in
invented
Springfield,
Yeah, he did it
Massachusetts,
in
at
the
a Y,
States.
But
But there's a whole bunch of.
We have just Gustavo Lucas who said, I would like to wish a great feast to all Canadians this July 1st. So-
Yay! Thank you. Thank you very much. That's awesome.
So
Anybody
well,
else?
He didn't say, unfortunately, he didn't say
What else you got?
where he's watching us from, but we have a bunch of people watching us.
Really?
Yes. Mostly my friends.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, okay.
So Canada Day. So there's the Salk vaccine. There's
Canadian?
Marconi, and
Telephone.
the telephone.
Hello? Okay.
And of course that's disputed. I mean, there's some dispute about
But
that.
Talk was a Canadian?
Snowmobile.
Jonas Salk?
Snowmobile, yes, snowmobiles,
What else we got?
insulin.
What else we got?
All kinds of
Hockey.
stuff.
That's
Hockey.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not
There's
sure.
a lot of
I
people
said
would,
basketball and hockey. That's the only thing I
yeah.
know.
Here we go. More than 30 inventions you wouldn't expect to be Canadian.
Okay,
There's
so
There
let's
you
see.
go.
What do we got?
Long
What do we got? We're
format.
running out of time.
Fantastic.
Oh, okay.
Well, made
There's
in
pictures
Made
of
in
them.
Canada.
Canada.
Okay, what do we got?
Ah.
Well, this is, insulin is,
Pick
is
up
the
the
big
pace
one.
here. You
Yeah,
have to-
insulin is huge.
That's
Okay, you know what? We
Slow
gotta
motion.
go.
Okay.
And I have to tell people that it's holiday time in Canada, so we'll be here next Friday, but we're going to be off. The program will not be aired as of
After.
July 12th for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But there's lots of other very exciting stuff on the show. So, don't be shy. Do come, and we'll still be producing items every day during the week. So that ends this edition of The Link. If you'd like to hear any of the complete versions of our interviews or see some of the other stories, the website is at www.rcinet.ca. So until next time, I'm Linda Jardin with Levon Sevens,
Hello.
Terry Haig, and Marie-Claude
Oh, she's
Simard.
leaving.
Wishing you all a
Going
great
on
week. She's
vacation.
going on vacation, and
Yeah,
we're going
well,
to miss her, but you'll be back and
Yep.
refreshed, and it'll be great.
Yep.
Have a great week, everyone. Enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.